The first sign of winter was not snow. It was silence. Birds vanished. Insects disappeared. The land seemed to hold its breath. Then the wind arrived, sharp, constant, unforgiving. It swept across open plains and frozen valleys, cutting through skin and spirit alike. For early humans living during the Ice Age, this wind was not background noise. It was a message. Winter was coming, and it would demand payment. The Ice Age was not a single frozen era, but a long cycle of brutal cold spells stretching over tens of thousands of years. Entire continents were reshaped by ice sheets so massive they crushed mountains and redirected rivers. Sea levels dropped, exposing vast land bridges. The world humans knew was wider, colder, and far more dangerous than today. Survival was not about comfort, it was about endurance. For early humans, winter was the ultimate test. Cold alone could kill, but cold rarely came alone. It brought hunger, exhaustion, sickness, and predators driven desperate by the same conditions. A single mistake, getting lost, losing fire, failing a hunt, could wipe out an entire family or group. There were no second chances. Imagine waking before dawn inside a low shelter made of bones and hides. The fire has burned low overnight. Frost clings to the inside walls. Your breath fogs the air. Outside, the land is buried under snow and ice, stretching endlessly. You are hungry, tired and cold, but you must move. Staying still means death. Shelter was the first battle humans had to win. In Ice Age conditions, exposure could kill within hours. Wind stripped heat from the body faster than hunger ever could. Early humans quickly learned that even a strong body meant nothing without protection. Caves were the most valuable shelters, offering natural insulation and safety from storms. But caves were rare and often already claimed by bears, cave lions, or hyenas. Humans who wanted a cave had to fight for it, or die trying. When caves were unavailable, humans built their own shelters from whatever the frozen land provided. Mammoth bones formed frames. Wooden poles were dragged across snow and ice. Hides were stretched, stitched, and layered thick. Earth, sod, and snow were packed on top for insulation. These structures were low, dark, and smoky, but they trapped heat and blocked wind. They were not primitive guesses, they were deliberate designs shaped by generations of trial and error. Inside these shelters, life became communal out of necessity. People slept close together, sharing warmth. Elders, children, and the injured stayed near the fire. Tools hung from walls. Food stores were guarded carefully. Outside, the wind screamed like an animal trying to tear the shelter apart. Inside, survival continued in silence and firelight. Fire was everything. Without it, Ice Age humans could not survive northern winters. Fire provided warmth, light, protection, cooked food, hardened tools, and psychological comfort. Losing fire during winter was often a death sentence. Some groups likely guarded embers continuously, carrying them when moving camps. Fire was not just a tool, it was life itself.
Starting a fire in winter was difficult even for skilled hands. Frozen fingers struggled to strike sparks. Damp wood refused to ignite. A bow drill required strength, patience, and dry materials, rare in a snow-covered world. Failure meant cold, darkness, and danger. Fire was never taken for granted. Food was the next relentless challenge. Winter stripped the land of plants. Berries froze, roots hardened, nuts vanished. Humans became heavily dependent on meat, especially fat. Fat was fuel. Fat meant warmth, strength, and survival. Lean meat alone could starve a person, even while eating regularly. Large animals dominated the Ice Age landscape: mammoths, woolly rhinos, bison, reindeer, horses. Hunting them was dangerous, but necessary. These animals provided not only food, but hides for clothing, bones for tools, sinew for sewing, and fat for energy. A successful hunt could keep a group alive for weeks. A failed one could doom them. Winter hunting was brutal. Snow slowed humans, but also slowed prey. Tracks were easier to follow, but the cold punished mistakes instantly. A charging animal could kill multiple hunters. Spears broke. Ice caused falls. Blood froze before it soaked the ground. These hunts demanded coordination, communication, and courage. Humans hunted cooperatively. They studied animal behavior, migration routes, and terrain. Animals were driven into traps, over cliffs, or into deep snow where movement became difficult. Fire, noise, and numbers were used strategically. These were not chaotic attacks. They were carefully planned operations born of desperation and intelligence. When an animal fell, nothing was wasted. Meat was butchered quickly before freezing solid. Organs were eaten immediately. Fat was stripped and stored. Bones were cracked for marrow. Hides were scraped, stretched, and preserved. Tendons became thread. Teeth and tusks became tools and ornaments. Waste meant death. Food storage was critical. Meat was dried, smoked, or frozen in pits dug into permafrost. These caches were hidden carefully, remembered mentally, and defended fiercely. Losing stored food meant starvation. Stealing food could trigger violent conflict between groups. Clothing was another line of defense against the cold. Early humans crafted fitted garments using bone needles and sinew thread. Fur was worn inward. Layers trapped air and retained heat. Hoods protected ears and faces. Footwear was insulated with grass, moss, or fur. Proper clothing meant survival. Poor clothing meant frostbite. Frostbite was common and deadly. Fingers blackened, toes were lost, infection followed. Yet, skeletal evidence shows people who survived severe injuries, amputations, and illness, proof that others cared for them. Cooperation and compassion increased group survival. Abandoning the weak often meant losing valuable knowledge and future contributors.
Water posed its own challenge. Rivers froze solid, lakes locked under thick ice. Snow had to be melted, costing fuel and energy. Dehydration weakened hunters and clouded judgment. Humans learned to manage water carefully, melting only what was needed and conserving firewood. Darkness weighed heavily on the mind. Ice Age winters brought long nights and short days. In some regions, the sun barely rose. Psychological strain was real. Fear, despair, and exhaustion threatened survival as much as hunger or cold. Storytelling helped humans endure. Around the fire, people shared stories of ancestors, hunts, spirits, and survival. These stories passed on knowledge, reinforced identity, and provided hope. Cave paintings, carvings, and symbolic objects suggest belief systems that helped people cope with suffering and uncertainty. Predators were constant threats. Wolves followed camps. Cave lions stalked from shadows. Bears claimed caves. Saber-toothed cats watched patiently. Fire offered protection, but hunger drove predators closer. Nights were tense, filled with distant howls and unseen movement beyond the firelight. Migration was both solution and danger. Humans followed herds across frozen landscapes, crossing ice bridges and vast plains. Blizzards erased landmarks. Crevasses swallowed the careless. Still, movement meant opportunity.
Staying still often meant death. Over generations, the Ice Age reshaped the human body. Stockier builds conserved heat. Shorter limbs reduced exposure. Facial structures adapted to warm, cold air before it reached the lungs. Evolution favoured those who endured. Not the strongest, but the most adaptable. Many did not survive. Entire groups vanished. Cultures disappeared without trace. The Ice Age was not a story of guaranteed survival. It was a filter. Only those who learned, cooperated, and adapted passed on their blood and knowledge. Eventually, the climate shifted. Ice retreated. Forests returned. New lands opened. But humanity was changed forever. The Ice Age forged resilience, intelligence, and cooperation into our species. It taught humans how to survive the impossible. When we look back at Ice Age humans, we should not see primitive beings barely clinging to life. We should see survivors of one of the harshest environments Earth has ever known. People who faced endless winter with stone tools, fire, and determination.